This is the Non-Tech Podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture, with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Dr. Doug Reed, and I am located on Abagway, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
My name is Dr. Matthew Stranick, and I am located in Menakwisk in St. John, New Brunswick, which is situated on the traditional and unceded territory of the Wolastoqiyik Maliseet people. Well, hey there, one and all. Welcome to the latest edition of the Non-Tech Podcast. With you as ever, I am Matt Stranick. This is Dr. Doug Reed. And at least here in New Brunswick, where I'm situated, it's awful cold today. Awful cold. We're in the minus 20s of cold. I dare say more so even than it's been previously in the week. Certainly, this might qualify as the coldest we've had in 2026. Not that we're counting here in St. John, New Brunswick. Before we go any further, I have to ask Doug about this highly pertinent topic.
Hi, Matt. Great to be here. And it is wickedly cold here as well. I'm about to pull out my bison fiber coat to stay warm. The coat that's good to minus 55. Because it's minus 24 or something, but the wind chill is wicked. And we live close enough to the water that we're getting hammered. So anyway, enough Atlantic Canadian how's the weather conversation. I would like to do an episode on reducing screen time.
Fantastic.
Denmark has been in a lot of my feeds lately and on my mind quite a bit. And one of the things I've discovered that they've done is in schools, they have said, we are reducing screen time. We are making the active decision to cut this out because we see all the negatives of it. And they have a whole pile of research in behind it. And it's like, wow, there's an organization that's listening to the experts and listening to reason. This is fantastic. Let's do this. So I was very excited to do the notes on this because it goes along with stuff that we have been saying now for 4 years, more than 4 years, 4.5 years or whatever, 4.5 seasons, whatever it happens to be. So that's where I was coming from. I hope this wasn't too out of the blue for you.
Well, it's entirely appropriate given that we are the Non-Tech Podcast. I have to say, certainly not coming out of left field whatsoever, I suppose, as far as it goes. And so, yeah, it's nice to be able to have something that we can speak to with some amount of critical pleasure rather than kind of coming at things where we're taking another tack, which we've done before. It's nice to be able to say, okay, as you say, the experts, in fact, are onto something here that might be potentially cool. So without further ado, Doug, we may as well just get right into it here. I see that your first reference is complete with a very compelling visual, which you can be sure will even throw this into the Camtasia recording for your viewing pleasure right now, as well as in the notes on our website. And this reference, as well as the visual associated here with Linebarger and Walker, 2005. And why don't you just walk us through this diagram, which people watching the video will be able to see this very moment, Doug.
Okay. Now, longtime listeners and watchers have probably noticed that every episode we mention how I go back in time and find the oldest reference from wherever. This topic goes back to 2005. I could not find an older one. This is a whole new thing. So 20 years ago is the first time anybody really dug in to taking a look at screen time and what it actually meant for development of educational developments with young people specifically. Now, this isn't about smartphones. They hadn't been invented yet. It wasn't about iPads. This is television, but what we've got is Lineberger and Walker took a look at children's television programming. It's specifically Arthur, Clifford, Blue's Clues, Dora the Explorer, Barney and Friends, Dragon Tale, Sesame Street, Teletubbies. I know some of those. I do not know all of them. I have no clue what some of those would be because that just wasn't my life.
Yeah.
And basically what they did is they did a bunch of research and said each of the programs had particular strategies embedded in its curricula that have been found to promote or inhibit expressive language production and vocabulary acquisition. And this very wonderful chart that they put together, it is very much an APA formatted line diagram kind of chart. And it was, here's how students did, or here's how children did with language acquisition. And not just language acquisition, but learning more language and then being able to use it. It wasn't just them being able to memorize and know, it was also the use components. And there was some shows that were designed very specifically. These were all captioned as, or advertised as, these are educational to help kids. And some of them were brutal. Some of them were so bad. And for example, like, you want students or children's learning acquisition to get worse? Watch Teletubbies. Teletubbies made it worse. Just that.
Understandably.
Kind of, yeah.
Understandably, based on my knowledge of that show. Yeah.
And just what surprised me is Sesame Street was second worst. Just because, oh my goodness, Sesame Street, that's on a pedestal. You're not allowed to poke fun at that or knock it down in any way. Because Sesame Street is just one of those iconic things. But then you have things like Dora the Explorer, and they said what they did was some of these programs went out of their way to get children involved. It's one of these, oh, we're going to go, like, there was one part in there where Dora the Explorer is a little girl with a backpack and her buddy boots, and they go and explore and do stuff. Okay, I'm overgeneralizing a lot. And now there's been children whose first words were backpack, because in Dora the Explorer, they get them to say the words. Say it with us. Oh, backpack. Say it with us. Boots. And so on. I'm not doing justice to the show. That is, I think I've seen like 1.5 episodes of it. So I don't know that much. But they had built-in designs, and it's not rocket science. It's how do we make it authentic? How do we make it engaging? It's not what the person on the screen is saying. It's what the kids watching are doing. And it comes back to all of these themes that we've talked about. And that's what happened with Dora the Explorer and Blue's Clues. It was say it with us. It was do this. And then the children would do that. It was about being active, not being passive. And I just needed to put it in there because as I looked for other screen time resources, this is the one. This is the seminal article everybody references. And it was free for me to access. So that's what I was taking a look at. So I'm wondering what your experience is. You have children, so you probably watched some of these shows. I have no.
Honestly, I really appreciate the graphic and the seminal reference in this area in terms of presenting a enduring piece of screen time scholarship, as it were. These shows are a bit before my kids' time. There are things that I'm aware of just because I'm a kind of pop culture knowledgeable kind of person. My kids were born 2009, 2012. So by the time they were experiencing screen time, it was a little bit later than with a lot of these shows. But I have to say, any of the shows that my kids experienced, it's pretty in keeping with what you described. Anything where we saw them acting or being involved by the plot, the stories, I dare say the curricula, that was always cool. I don't have any regular, real examples that are jumping out at me with that, to be honest with you. I think most of the shows that my kids experienced, that we put in front of my kids, at least as far as TV, it was really just like, okay, we've heard that other parents are you sharing this with their kids. We didn't really think too much intentionally about what we were putting in front of them. It was more the case that, is there anything offensive here? Is there anything problematic in terms of its messaging, in terms of its content? But we weren't necessarily throwing something in front of them to have specific educational or mindful purpose. We weren't doing it with much intention, I have to say. And that's just me being real. And I think probably that is the experience of a lot of parents. I think that's pretty representative. But it's nice to know that there are these studies that we can refer to, that anybody who's, say, checking out this podcast episode or is looking at media maybe with a more critical mindset, it's helpful. It's a starting point for people's practice as parents, sure, but then also as educators, because certainly screen time does enter into the K to 12 curricula in some manner or other, whether it's films, probably not TV shows as much, but there are some amount of, what do you call it, component which includes screen time in the contemporary K to 12 curriculum.
And thanks for being so honest with that. You just added a whole bunch of information literacy to the discussion, because I want to trust things. If something says healthy on the shelf, I'm going to buy it. If something's being advertised as educational for kids, I have often made the assumption, oh, okay, so that must be okay. And then when I take a closer look, when I'm not exhausted or frazzled or overworked or frustrated or whatever, I look and it's like, oh, this is marketing. This is not, this isn't actually that great. So, and it's like, hey, welcome to life, right? It is do your own homework kind of thing. And what are you comfortable with? And sometimes people just get tired. I know as a teacher, there was times where it's like, oh, we got to watch a movie today. Pull in the film projector. We got to watch a movie because of whatever. Often it was the day after parent-teacher interviews and all the marks had already been out and back. And it was like, yeah, I'm frazzled. Let's make this happen. So thanks for that honesty and candor, because it's real. And you didn't beat yourself up. Well,
it's candor is what it is. It's my experience for sure. And I've certainly, even when I was doing my BEd training, which was a long time ago, I remember I discovered at the Fredericton Public Library a series of videos on ancient Rome, these history television documentaries. And I'm like, okay, this will fulfill the curricular objectives for the grade 8 history class or the grade 9 history class that I was responsible for preparing. And nobody at the school I was sharing that with had anything bad to say. It's like, okay. and it was pretty substantial in terms of the video component. There were assignments that went along with it, which made it not just watching TV, but I was certainly grateful at that point to have that resource available, quite frankly. The VCR cart and video series that I borrowed from the library.
Yep.
So
And that
anyway,
leads
Doug, does that bring us to our next reference here? Are we at the point where we can speak
yeah,
to Wu, Sun, He, and Zhang 2016?
yeah, the effects of interventions targeting screen time reduction. And what this really does, where it's headed, is for me to, when I look back, like it ties in so well. It says the effect of interventions specifically targeting screen time reduction has not been well described. Additionally, the results from studies of the effectiveness of intervention to aim at screen time reduction are inconsistent. And part of my question is, how do we get there? That's 10 years ago, 2016. How did we get there? It's like, oh, screen time is good. Give them his computer. It's good. And how long does it take to find out? No, that's BS. It's not necessarily good. It could be, but it's definitely not a blanket solution to everything. How did we get there? And this is where I saw the creep of where ed tech stopped being about education and started to being about pushing products and people making money off it, rather than just, let's help the students. Like, we are the Ed Non-Tech podcast. I have numerous degrees. So do you, in talking about dealing with education and researching education and using the technology and all that. But my goodness, right? Like, the deeper thought 10 years ago is, wow, everything's a mess. We don't know where did this message come from? Like, who was saying more screen time is better? I don't think it was educators. So this is debunking marketing BS, honestly, is what I really like about Wu et al. Because they went and they looked at piles of articles out there at the time, and it was a mess. It was just, nobody really had any. And then there was a couple of articles I found, and it's like, somebody paid you to write this. And I'm not going to name any names or anything, but you could tell somebody got funded to make sure a positive article went out, or a less negative article went out, however that gets phrased. And honestly, it's like commercials, right? If somebody's paying you, oh yeah, use this toothpaste or use that whatever, right? This spark plug is the right way to go. You say it because you're being paid to say it. And we're looking at metrics for academics and publishers that involve get another line on your CV. That's what it is. And ed tech went down that road. And I'm not going to harp on that, but that's just where it's coming from. So I really liked when Wu just got to the point. And this is in the journal Medicine, right? This isn't an educational journal. This is like a medical journal, right? It's a healthcare field, not education field. So I really liked when they put that down that way.
Well, I think, Doug, thank you for that. I think that there's some themes that are starting to emerge here a bit, even at this juncture in the discussion. I think that term you mentioned a little bit earlier, information literacy, is really important. And I like how we're starting to dovetail that with healthcare. I sort of found myself when I was preparing the WordPress and some of the materials to go along with this episode and a subsequent episode we're going to record on, I think I can preview it, on AI slop. I found myself, which is a really great episode, and I'm looking forward to recording that, and we're looking forward to sharing that with you before too long, folks. But spoiler alert, I found myself thinking about sort of the empty filler kind of calories that we take on when we buy heavily produced consumer foods, for instance, at Loblaws or whatnot, right? We buy this bread, but then it's got colors in it, it's got additives, it's got empty calories. Or we buy really any kind of frozen or any kind of prepared product that we all just take off the shelf and go, okay, this is a microwave meal. I'm going to have my entree for dinner or my snack or whatever. And in addition to the nutrient value, there are all these empty calories, all these sort of bodies that are part of the food product that physically become negative or inert agents within our metabolism, within our bodies physically. I sort of think that this messaging, this content, these marketing ploys that get shoehorned into screen time or ed tech interventions or the like, I sort of think of those as being kind of those filler carbs and calories that can lead to deleterious health effects in the mind or in the brain or in thinking down the stretch, long-term effects of being fed or not having a critical discernment when you are feeding yourself these kinds of food items for your mind, so to speak, if that's not straining the metaphor too much.
No, not at all. And I'm going to follow up on that with something else. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but first time I went to Ireland, my brother lives in Ireland. First time I went there was right after they joined the EU, the European Union. And when you join the EU, there was a bunch of rules, right? We'll give you funding stuff, but you get to keep, here's the new rules on food prep and what you're allowed to do and all that. And you got to keep certain foods. You could say, oh, this is a cultural food. One of the ones that Ireland kept was milk chocolate. And I went there, and my brother was talking about how great the chocolate was. And I'm like, yeah, okay, it's chocolate. I get it. And he gave me a bit. We were walking someplace. He gave me a bit. And I had to stop walking because it tasted so good. Like I'd never been shocked like that before with how good chocolate could taste. And so all of the empty calorie conversation, yeah, but sometimes the quality is in the taste. Like, isn't that why we're eating it? And I just went to Ireland last year, and I was like, oh, we got to get some chocolate. This stuff is so good. And then I had it, and it was like, is my memory wrong? Like, was I just screwed up? And then I investigated, and Irish chocolate used to be like 29% cacao products and 27% milk solids. And I was like, okay, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't care, right? It tasted great. And I look at the wrapper because I still have one of the bars I haven't eaten yet. And the bare minimum I've discovered at the EU is 20% cacao products and 20% milk solids. And that's exactly what's happened. Cadbury's has dumped it down to 20 and 20. And it was like, and now it's full of palm oil. It's not it's not the stuff I love, even though I have the memory of it. And it's like, it's still in the same wrapper, it's still the same size. Shrinkflation didn't happen. But now if you're below 20%, you have to call it like chocolate flavored covering. You can't call it a chocolate bar anymore. So it's all that stuff you were talking about with the empty calories, but I see the flavor as the value, right? I want to like the taste of whatever it happens to be. And I don't have great taste buds. So when we take that and bring it over to the ed tech, it's how many people were sold here, put that device in front of your kids, right? Get yourself a bit of time to relax or make dinner while they're on the screen, or here, teachers, give them activity thing on the devices. And the quality just evaporated away because the message was, here, buy this device or use this device more, rather than let's look at the actual quality. And so in 2016, a bunch of research was out, and the systemic review said, yeah, we're all over the place. So that's why the Woo et al. Article was so nice. And thank you for bringing up the food thing, because the chocolate shocked me and it hurt me. Like I felt betrayed, right? With all the things going on in the world, I got betrayed by a chocolate bar that's been in my freezer since last summer. It's just...
Deeply sorry you had that experience, Doug. And yeah, I just saw the health journal reference as being kind of a neat way to bring that in. And the fact that it's a systemic review, so it's a lit review, and it's a meta analysis.
Yeah.
Fans of the show or people who've been watching for a while will know that we do enjoy ourselves a significant meta analysis on this show. So thanks a lot for bringing those in, Doug, I got to say.
You're welcome, because I do
Would that
love
bring
it.
us to our next reference from 2021 here, pal?
And happily, International Journal of Mental Health and Addiction. So we're still over in healthcare.
Wow.
Which,
This is fascinating, Doug. This is a
yeah,
fascinating sort of mining seam that we've discovered here that we can get into.
yes. And I have a theory on that. I have no evidence except the anecdotal stuff from me looking for these notes. This is all happening not in education journals, because ed tech has taken over the word. Like corporate ed tech has taken over the word. So all of this information can't happen in ed tech articles or can't happen in education articles. It has to be out there to get through. So I think that's awesome. And I did something different with this next article. The Neophyta, Manuel, and Eckelboom 2021 effects of excessive screen time on neurodivergent learning, memory, mental health, and neurodegeneration is the name of the article. But I actually went in, and this is the first time ever. We're 4.5 seasons in, and I've never used a cited reference as the little quote that I've come up with. So this is all new for me. There's a lot of cited references. I read a lot of academic articles, but this is the first time I've actually included it. And I know non-academic nerds will not care, but it mattered to me. This is part of my learning and developing.
Congratulations for hitting a significant milestone personally and in the history of the show, Doug.
Yeah. So the quote is, though electronic media may be used for educational purposes, studies have shown that skills learned in those mediums are often limited in comparison to those acquired in real life contexts. And I want to say, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Like, yes. Right? It's when you're learning things just on your own or off a screen or off a very cut and paste, here's the recipe book checklist kind of thing. Yeah, it's not going to be as robust. It's going to be far more limited than in real life context, because it has to be. I many years ago, one of my nieces was very small, like 1.5, 2 years old, and came to visit her cousins who were much older, and her language acquisition in that 2 weeks spiked like crazy. And then when they went back, the daycare or the creche said, we don't know what you did with her language, but holy smokes, she has so much better language now. It's like, yeah, because she spent a week or two talking to her older cousins, and the language flew, right? It's like, yeah, that's how it works, right? She can learn all these things, but until she uses it in a real life context and it's authentic and it matters and it's engaging, forget it, right? Like, I can learn stuff, but till I actually do it, it's just craziness. And it's so nice that this article, this mental health and addiction article, talks about that, because they also talk about neurodivergency, and we got more and more of that being identified these days. So I just wanted to bring all of that in. But they actually referenced the Linebarger and Walker article, so I wanted to just include, yeah, it's seminal. That's where people go, and we had to go to TV. So anyway, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, because I really enjoyed actually citing inside a quote this time.
Well, I think it's outstanding Doug, that you have managed to achieve that personal and academic goal, I dare say. And I think really just back to that old notion of the methods of instruction are themselves instructional, right? Not that far removed from Marshall McLuhan's famous formulation that the medium is the message, in as much as if you're doing screen oriented education or education through screens, then you're going to develop literacy skills to navigate a screen rich environment. You're going to become familiar with the kinds of interactions and micro interactions that are necessary to navigate that. And so, what does that particular context teach you that's transferable to other settings? Well, arguably, not a whole lot, right? It pertains pretty strictly just to its own self. And so, for instance, when you and I worked at Thompson Rivers, their open learning division, I guess I shouldn't just single them out, but it's the example that I'm most familiar with. But the way that those courses were all structured, it was very much on the we're going to mail you a package with material in it, and you read it and you respond to some prompts, very much like the old, going back to the early 20th century, mail correspondence courses, except the instructional design model, at least at Thompson Rivers, open learning, was an online version of that. You access the course website, not too much interaction with the instructor per se, more like complete this checklist of tasks as you've described, complete these quantifiable tasks within the learning management system. And then the instructor was largely there for evaluation, summative evaluation, not too many opportunities for formative feedback, not too many opportunities for experientially rich modes of learning, or learning in ways which would sort of contribute to the student's ability to operate in other settings and contexts. And maybe I'm being unfair. You were actually an
No.
instructional designer, whereas I was kind of involved in other capacities there. But that was my general impression of those OL courses while I was there over a 4-year period.
I think you're being very fair. I've seen that model at several other places where it's, here's the content, learn it. It's from the old correspondence model, from the 1850s. It's, we're going to mail you the stuff and we'll provide you with a bit of help. Like, come on. It was, oh yeah, the materials will stand for themselves. And it's like, that's not how people learn. We have 170 years of research that proves that. Right? It's, what are the numbers? Less than 9% of people finish a correspondence course. But if you design it and put support on it, the numbers jump to like 93% of people finish. Those are rough numbers. It's been a few years since I've had to have that conversation, but I have the literature here someplace. Yeah, it's, are you kidding me here? So instead of let's mail it to you, it's let's put it on that screen. Right? It's here, you can access it on your fingertips. That does not make it better. It definitely does not make it better. So it's, how do we design it differently? How do we make it work? Because really, it is kind of a standalone, other than there were some kind souls there that if somebody called, they'd answer and they'd help. But it's, I know that when I was at NAIT, we had to learn DACUM, deconstructing a curriculum, because some places had the opposite model where it was, here's all the content, the instructor sitting at the back, if you have, and work through at your own speed. If you have any questions, go talk to them, but they're not teaching you. They're not standing at the front. They're waiting for you to go to them. And that passive model Some students will, some students won't, right? And the assessment is, did that instructor think you did well enough? Could you verbally explain it, or could you show it? So that's what the assessment is. What happens if the person's a jerk? Or what happens if you don't get along with them? You're in trouble, right? It's cut your losses, because I've been in those situations where, okay, this person doesn't like me for whatever reason. And I get it. There are definitely people that don't like me. I'm okay with it. It's like, I can't change who I am, right? It's one of those things. So to have this sit down and say, oh, yeah, the way this learning happens is going to limit their ability to grow with it. Yeah, of course it does. Real life, authentic, engaging doing, that's where people learn. We know that. So these other models are so far behind, but they're tied into bureaucracies and infrastructures and everything. So I get it, but it's like, oh, we could be doing better. And I keep striving to do better. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but those are my thoughts.
Well, that's terrific. And I think that really steers us well, I think, into this next reference, which you have located, really quite recent, this one from 2023. I may read this one aloud here, Doug, if I may, just because it is resonating for me here, with Mupala Vupapalapati Pulagaru Screens Vasalu and Kumar. I hope I have done some amount of justice to those names, but this quote that I like, it seems to be very building on what we've already been speaking to here, Doug. Screen media may have serious adverse effects on children's health over the long term, making this a pressing public health concern. I think we've been speaking to that pretty significantly thus far. It has raised the likelihood that children will become obese. I think it's fair to say we are seeing increased rates of obesity in the general school-going public, experience behavioral problems, sleep irregularities, poor academic performance, etc. I think that a lot of these things are fairly self-evident if we look not just at children's populations, but even among adult population in post-secondary settings. Doug, what do you think?
Oh, I agree. I agree with you completely. I know that there have been school districts that have sent letters to the ministers of education saying, we apologize. These students coming out of grade 12 are not ready for post-secondary. And it's not the school's fault, right? It's not the teacher's fault. It's definitely not the teacher's fault. It's look at all the other things being pressed upon them. And one of them is, yeah, here's your phone. People are addicted. They just are. Addiction takes it away, right? Look at the doom scrolling. People, I want that dopamine hit, and I'm bad for it too, right? Like I'll sit down and be working on something, and then a reel pops up, and then another one, and then another one. The next thing I know, it's 40 minutes later. It's like, okay, what have I got out of that 40 minutes, right? I'm more tired. I didn't finish any of the other stuff I had planned to do. I wasn't productive. I wasn't using my brain. I was just a receptor. So these things are now designed into a lot of the screens that are getting used. And honestly, how do we lock stuff down? I remember, like, I was the first person to publish using podcasting in education. I cannot find an article older than mine anywhere.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah, that was back in 06. So wow. I've got that, and on the iPads, because it was like, or it wasn't even iPads. iPads didn't exist. It was iPods, and we had to buy the microphones or the speakers separately. Like you couldn't even record. You had to spend the $100 or $119 and change on the little thing that plugged into the bottom of it. Then you could record. It had And I locked those things down hard, right? And just put the content that we wanted on them to give to the students. And there was one little helicopter game I could not get off.
Wow.
I did not have the skills or the software to get that game off. Do you want to know the percentage of kids, the percentage of students that found that damn game and they were playing that game instead of, and it was like one of those little side scroller helicopter games. Here, come drop this here. Here, pick up that person there. Like, like the very 1990-ish or 1980 version of whatever. It was just that. And it was just on those little screens. And people found it. We couldn't get it off. And I spent a pile of time on it. And I know other people that had more technical skills. We couldn't get it off for however it was programmed in. So how now? How can anybody now tie stuff down? Right? Like, I can go to the internet in an instant. When I wrote my dissertation, I didn't have access to Wi-Fi. Where I was at, there was no Wi-Fi. So I could go and sit at a kitchen table or sit in a hammock. I wrote a huge amount of it in a hammock because I borrowed a laptop and whatever else. I was using a laptop for some sessional teaching I was doing, but it was for the thesis. And now the distractions are insane. Like, I don't know how anybody does it. And I grew up, I remember life before Google, right? Like, I remember life before the internet. I think ARPANET came around the year before I was born. So basically I learned all kinds of great skills that I could still use today, but the young ones today don't have that. They grew up in this world. So how do you get rid of the distractions? How do you stop them? Can you imagine sitting, being a teacher, and everybody's on their phone? It's like, okay, nobody's listening. So what are we doing here? What's the situation? So to actually have somebody come out like Mapala et al. And say, here's the issues. We have proof. We need to address this. To me, it's like leaded gas in cars. They added the lead on purpose because of the way motors were built back in the 1920s, right? It took how long to get the lead out? And I think that's where we're at with screens now. I think people have said, okay, enough is enough. We have to deal with it. Not only is this an education issue, this is a public health issue. And I find a lot of public health stuff, people are way better at paying attention to because it costs so much money in the healthcare industry for an already stretched healthcare industry. So those are my thoughts on it. And I am glad that I found so many healthcare articles because they get to present their case so differently and so bluntly. It's great.
Well, and it does, Doug. Thank you for that. It does put me in the mind of what you were saying earlier about how technology companies have largely co-opted the discourse in the educational sector, the educational sphere. And so, again, to hit this theme of information literacy as being important for students, important for educators within a matter of a public health context. Literacy rates are a key indicator of public health generally. So digital literacy should be counted among that, I think. And everything we're seeing here with these references sort of go, okay, this reaffirms maybe some things that I had thought in the back of my mind or some observations I had made sort of to myself, sort of in an ad hoc fashion. And that's really the function of good educational research, to bring out in some way something that is maybe an a priori assumption or challenges those assumptions, challenges these implicit kind of tacit aspects of practice or knowledge and interrogates them publicly through peer-reviewed references and citations. So I just got to really say, Doug, that you've done an outstanding job. You always do, but lining up some of these references from the public health area is indeed I didn't necessarily anticipate the direction that you'd be taking when you put the topic into the Google Doc, and that was the first part of it that I saw. So I really like how this conversation has gone here so far, Doug.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, I know it probably came out of the blue and there wasn't anything from the 1800s, but one thing I really like with this is, why are we just assuming? Why aren't we taking a look at this? Why are we trusting whatever that message is? Right? It just reminds me of way back in the day, we used to have questions like, how do we know which mushrooms are good to eat? Or like with my color vision, I don't pick anything out in the woods and eat it. I don't do that. Right? Like literally every mushroom and toadstool are edible, but some are only edible once. Like you could chew on it, but it'll kill you. Who's the first person that figured that out? Right? What was that person's name? There's like, oh yeah, don't eat the orange ones. Yeah. Do you remember Bob? Yeah. Bob taught us that, right? Poor Bob. I miss Bob. He was a good guy.
Rest in power, Bob.
It's that kind of stuff. Why? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a very good friend named Bob. I don't know why I just use Bob, but my friend Bob's very smart. He wouldn't do that. Bob, if you're listening, sorry. But it's one of those things that I look at and just say, why did we just go along with this? Let's start using critical discernment. Why were we believing whatever the marketing was or whatever the messaging is people are told? But so that's where we're at. That leads us to the PISA 2025 Learning in the Digital World Framework article. That's the last article, but it's the first one I read.
Okay.
This was when I went, and I early mentioned Denmark because they were the ones that 2026. Nope, we're done. We're putting blocks and bans on things, like across the country. We're doing that. This was the OECD article or publication that everybody cited. This is the one that came out and said, "Are you kidding me? We have to deal with this." I'm a big fan of technology when it works well for what we're trying to do, which is help students learn, help students have a better life and all that. I get it. I love it. And this article talks about digital learning technologies are fundamentally transforming how people learn. I don't disagree with that. I don't think anybody with any thought process could disagree with that. They deliver significant autonomy to learners, shape the way that people interact with information and learning resources, and deeply influence how we make sense of our reality. I completely agree with all of that. And now finally somebody has stood up and said, enough's enough. We've thought about it. We're not doing that way anymore. So can you imagine the pressure that was put on that company to say, or that country to say, no, keep on keeping on. And it's like, no, we're getting off. We're getting off your crazy train, and we're doing it this way because we know that's better. And it's the stepping off of the crazy train that needs to happen so much more often. So I'm wondering what your thoughts, because this is an OECD thing, so it's huge. It took years for everybody to put together, and it was a huge pile of people. That's why it's PISA 2025 and not the laundry list of authors, because there was a ton of people involved with that.
Well, just in as much as things that are digital have a tangible, visible effect on our day-to-day lives, nobody can dispute that. Certainly, your example earlier of picking up your phone and just scrolling a bit through ostensibly the course of a regular workday, and then finding, okay, that time is now irrevocably gone from my limited repository of minutes that I have available to me in the course of my life, and what indeed did I get out of it. So if we're talking about shaping of reality, I went on a a website to buy this t-shirt specifically. I hunted it up on the internet. I was like, I want to get a Leatherface shirt. They're one of my favorite bands. So I went to Bandcamp and looked it up. And I had this whole experience, this whole interaction, which originated through my participation in an online music community. Music is something which is fundamental to my sense of self and how I construct the world. And so the way that I interact with technology is a huge part of that. I have this goofy kind of thing where every year I do a public YouTube playlist and I add to it throughout the year. And people other than me have started noticing this somehow because just as of yesterday, this 2026 music playlist has attracted something in the order of 930 views, which
Wow.
people are it's not music that I'm making. It's not my own content. It's simply me as a quote unquote curator, but it's not even that. It's just I want to listen to music. I don't drive, so when I'm taking transit from one end of the city to the other for my job or when I'm walking somewhere, I want to have a few hundred songs that I can listen to. But now music has become so detached from the physical media. It's so detached from terrestrial radio. It's so detached from CDs or vinyl per se. It's really all about streams. And so if you start thinking about it in those terms, okay, well, for instance, my playlist for 2025, by the end of it, had more than 20,000 views over the course of a single year, which I'm just a regular ish kind of guy in the Maritimes. I'm just an education worker of some variety. I lead a pretty low key life, but these digital services have now become such a key way of sharing, like, share. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, right? That whole culture.
Yes.
Suddenly, there's an interest in how individuals are curating their experiences, maybe in ways that weren't there before the ubiquitous internet became a thing. So I think that may be somewhat of a digression here, but that aspect here of that quote and deeply influence how we make sense of our reality. I think because this is actually the last reference, it seems like a pretty good way to go out. And it does seem to speak to a lot of the themes that have cropped up in our conversation thus far.
Yeah, I agree. Ending on discernment, I think, is fantastic. That is a great way to wrap up those quotes. And in case anybody wonders what my bias is, it's there. I'm not hiding it. I have my thoughts on it. So I have shared some images. Are there any that you would like to talk to? Because there are a lot of them are about people using screens. So if not, I have a favorite. But
well, first of all, folks, we're now going to have these available on our website. Be sure to check them out. But now, as we're discussing them, like we did a little bit earlier in the show with that nifty graphic quote, we're using the power of learning technology, the power of Camtasia to show these visuals as we discuss them. I'm just scrolling through it now, Doug, for what is, for me, the first time to see these visuals. I'm a fan of Mother Goose and Grimm. I'm a fan of the old comic strips from the newspapers. And so we see this little duck or goose kind of character who's dressed up, ready for flight of sort, and he's standing by a wishing well. And it's just a two-frame thing, and he says, "I wish," and you think, what's going to be so profound? And you see him standing there next to ye old wishing well. I hadn't dropped my iPhone down there. Bazinga! Who can't relate? Those units are in the hundreds of dollars. They're high-end technology. and you think maybe there's going to be the precipice of a profound thought here attached to this, but no, it's absolutely mundane. And yet we all know what that's like, that moment of panic, that, oh no, so much of my day-to-day interaction, so much of my online agency, if not identity, is bound up in my interactions and transactions through these machines and screens. Again, I feel like that was just pretty poignant, pretty on the nose, given where we're at today, Doug. So that's the one that I think I probably like the most out of all of these.
And my favorite comes back to healthcare. There's one picture with a football helmet and a football, and it talks about the 20-20-20 rule for the big game. And it's the 20-20-20 rule is more than that. It's when you're on screens. Every 20 minutes, take a 20-second break, and then look at something at least 20 feet away, which is what, 6-7 meters away, to reduce eye strain. Because if you're staring at the screen all the time, look away, give your eyes a break. Once you lose your eyesight, it doesn't come back. So it's take care of yourself, please. Look to the future. So that's what I had for my favorites. And there's some others there that I think are cute and a bit more negative, a bit more like it depresses me a little, right? A bit on the nose, that they're there so people can see it. But
well, you really ought to. They're all pretty cool, I think. And in keeping with our topic today, Doug, does this bring us to the word, question, and phrase of the podcast?
yes, the word of the podcast today is screens, because that's where this all started. This is where the marketing comes from, and this is where the hype is coming from. So screens is the word of the day. The question of the day is, how does Denmark's reduction screen time impact your thinking about technology use in education? So finally, we have a whole country saying, no, we're done. We're not doing this. We've got to put limits on this. And phrases of the podcast, there's two of them. Not having a critical discernment is one. And the other one is stepping off the crazy train. And I think awesome. That makes our points.
Definitely so. I like all of those, Doug, very much. I don't know if you had it in mind when you were saying that about the iconic song by Ozzy Osbourne, the late Ozzy Osbourne, going off the rails,
yeah.
Crazy train. That's, yeah.
I didn't, but my goodness, I will claim to say yes, because I do like that song. But
there we go. I just kind of touched on that when you first coined that phrase earlier in the recording. Well, folks, I am stoked. I've enjoyed this conversation very much. I hope that you're staying warm, staying safe wherever you are. Doug, anything you wanted to add here before we wrap this one up?
I'm going to go check out to see if we have any storm chips in the house, because that wasn't a thing growing up, but since I've moved back, storm chips is a thing. So definitely need some of those at some point today.
Well, fantastic. Appreciate you being here. Take care, everybody, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.